Firstly, it's a real privilege to be asked to contribute tonight. On the way here, I was thinking about my motivation in accepting, as being on show and being filmed and potentially being asked questions I can't answer is not something I normally seek. However, the years of witnessing poverty, exclusion, and their impact on human beings, homelessness, family breakdown, mental illness, impel me to speak out, to share the truth of the lives of the people I have met. Each of us will have started our preparation today by identifying what we mean by family. It's not in my brief to challenge or authenticate the view of a traditional or normal family. I would normally use the word with a pretty wide interpretation as a recognizable unit which nurtures, cherishes, supports, struggles together, is sometimes part of the problem, not the solution, or all or none of these things. That's not very helpful, though, in the light of tonight's discussion. So I'll be using the term to describe a family unit of 1 or 2 adults with children, potentially extended members. My other choice is not to speak of the state in the abstract, but probably more of government policy within the current political reality. 2 basic premises. Firstly, I stand by the fact that the welfare state was established to provide a safety net for those people in our society who are the most vulnerable, for whatever reason. I do not think that it's an out-of-date concept. The safety net is being removed under various headings: welfare reform, austerity, as well, of course, as affordability, of making work pay, when today 2/3 of the people receiving benefits are in working households. Which leads to my second premise. There has been a deliberateness, some go as far as saying cruelty, about the austerity agenda, and I think it is an agenda which is about making those who are least able to afford it to pay for the country's deficit, for which they have not been responsible. Mention has been made recently of austerity being over. I wish. Even if it were, it has ruined so many families' lives, and that can never be put right, especially for the children who have been robbed of their childhood. And there are no quick fixes for this kind of damage. So let's look at some of the specifics, just snapshots of the state's most recent negative interactions with the family. Welfare reform. Anyone who, with any knowledge of how the system worked in practice, welcomed the idea of reform, streamlining bureaucracy, introducing consistency in application of criteria, making the system more accessible for the most vulnerable people. What we didn't advocate for was benefit caps being imposed, leading to families being moved away from their support network, children's schools, workplaces. There has been an increase of over 50% in the number of families being arbitrarily moved out of London in the first 6 months of this year alone. That's well over 1,000 families. Of the withdrawal of education support allowance from young people who now have no other means, much more. Universal credit, as Philip has inferred, again, we welcomed it. We welcomed the rationalising of an utterly complex benefit system. The reality is that it is paid in arrears, with the first payment taking at least 6 weeks, often leaving people penniless and forced into unpayable debt, as well as requiring, to be honest, a degree-level knowledge to fill in the application form. Imposing sanctions. If you are late or fail to attend an appointment at the Job Centre Plus for whatever reason, your benefits to which you are entitled are withdrawn. We employed an advice worker at the Cardinal Hume Centre who had previously worked at Job Centre Plus. She told us of the weekly target the staff were given to impose sanctions regardless of the circumstances. The housing market, ludicrously low levels year on year of investment in affordable housing, failure to introduce rent regulation, leading to increased homelessness and more families being placed in temporary accommodation. Tonight, some 120,000 children will be sleeping in accommodation that is quite frankly bad for their health and their development, and they're by no means the only ones. That the others are probably not on anybody else's radar. The withdrawal of public services across the board has led to lots of things, but the one I'm concerned about often is the advice desert, where there is nowhere that anyone can go for informed, objective information and advice, not to mention support. The withdrawal of legal aid for a whole range of issues, including family law and social welfare cases. which have dropped, by the way, respectively 60% and 80% in take-up. So people are not able to go to court. So although you have rights, you do not have the means to ensure they are respected. None of this makes any kind of economic sense. Intervention to prevent a crisis is always more cost-effective than responding to that crisis. And moving on today to theme, and I'm sure Al will develop this further, I believe what we're witnessing is the state's deprioritisation of children and young people, with the consequence that they in turn are going to struggle to establish a family life, which should surely frighten us for the future, if not the now, which, as I said, I'm sure Al will develop that. I believe the common good, as we understand it, is under attack as the degree of inequity in our country increases. Currently, 20%, 1 in 5 of us, is officially living in poverty in the UK. That includes 4 million children. Is it all doom and gloom? Well, for many people, yes, it is, frankly, and they can see no way out. However, for those of us who have resources, who can make choices, who should be able to make ourselves heard, who are formed by Catholic social teaching, doing nothing is a cop-out. And telling ourselves that there is nothing we can do is frankly an excuse. If you take the work of the churches and faith-founded organisations, charities, out of the equation, the picture would be immensely sadder and more tragic for thousands of people. I had a whole list of what the churches do. I'll now cut that short, but it is pretty impressive. And one of the 2 important things is the advocating for change, which happens behind closed doors, and challenging the poverty myths which abound. And that, for me, is the hope factor, that the churches, like-minded others, can also, alongside that practical support, call it out for what it is, name it, the injustice, the cruelty, the opportunity denying, the life-debasing reality for so many of our fellow travellers. Poverty is caused by the ways we choose how we exist in society, so it can be ended if we make different choices. All in all, I believe we are being called upon to be ambassadors of hope in these fairly desperate times, nationally and internationally. So can it get better? Yes, of course it can. With the political will, with imagination, with commitment. It will take time, as it means the eradication of our ingrained habit of treating people differently, of believing there is an inevitability about poverty, and of finding it acceptable that millions of people count for less, matter less, deserve less, and even need less in order to flourish. Thank you.